One of the nice perks of being a Sega Master System owner were the nicely colored and detailed games back in the late 80s and early 90s. I mean, some of the games for the platform look spectacular, and would give some early 16-bit games a run for their money. And that's what this episode is all about. We are gonna appreciate us some graphics on the good old Master System, and look at 10 great looking games for it, according to your buddy Sega Lord X here. Of course there are many more great looking games on the system, so feel free to drop your opinion on the subject down in the comments. I hope you guys enjoy 10 great looking Sega Master System games. In 1987, a sequel to the arcade classic Fantasy Zone was released, called The Tears of Opa Opa. This was done internally by Sega themselves, and was an original property for the Master System. It made a number of changes to the original formula, including warp zones to different areas of each stage, and a complete lack of a radar telling you where the enemy bases are located. This encourages exploration of the warp zones, because you need to defeat every base to move on. There is still a store where you can buy weapons, speed increases, and extra lives, and of course each stage ends in a boss battle. I love the color use in this one. I mean, you didn't see games like this on many 8-bit machines at the time. It also fills the screen with enemies, tons of them, they themselves filled with great looking detail and color. This one proved popular and Sega ported it to their System E arcade board, which is essentially the arcade version of the Master System itself. This version of the game is actually a bit better in my opinion, as it uses a radar telling you where the bases are. There's also a remake of this by M2, who completely redid the visuals, added a new and improved radar, and upgraded the sound significantly. It was developed to the spec of the System 16 arcade board, and is perhaps the very best version of Fantasy Zone ever created. Unlike the other versions of Taz-Mania, Sega did the 1993 Master System version in-house, and the quality of this one is sky high. I mean, look at the visuals here. This is an 8-bit game at the time when those games were supposed to be low-detailed, low-colored shadows of their 16-bit counterparts. Yet like so many others, that Master System color comes shining through with visuals well ahead of expectation. It's a total package too, sporting some great animation to go with the color and detail. There's practically none of the nasty sprite flicker that dogged many 8-bit titles that had larger characters, and the only thing missing is multiple layers in the backgrounds. This one doesn't play bad either, though the floaty controls do take a bit of getting used to. It benefits greatly from having a bit of exploration needed to find the exit to some stages. It's short, but a Master System experience I can recommend all day long. This one was never released in North America. In 1994, a company called Chrysalis set out to make Road Rash for the Sega Master System. It was surely a fool's errand, and one that could only end in disaster. Except it didn't, and the end product still shocks me to this very day. I mean, look at this game. It resembles its 16-bit counterparts so closely, you can't help but to pat the old Master System on the back. Forward-scrolling games rarely were much to look at on 8-bit systems, but what was accomplished here is easily one of the platform's most impressive. Road signs, trees, cows, other racers all move towards the screen with impressive detail. You can even read the road signs. The backdrops give you a nice image of mountains and multiple layer of clouds, and even the music manages to capture the spirit of the Genesis game. It's also got the different tracks, bikes, and characters here for the full Road Rash experience. It was on the Game Gear as well, but the Master System version feels faster and plays better to me. I'm not sure if that's down to display or controller or what, but it's a great game all the same. When Phantasy Star landed on the Sega Master System in 1988, there was simply not a single game like it out at the time. Aside from the extremely challenging and engrossing story and gameplay, it had beautiful cinemas, colorful battle and overworld graphics, and a forward-scrolling first-person dungeon engine that was simply mind-blowing. 1988, man, just look at these graphics. Thing is, it sounded great too, and even utilized the FM sound add-on for the machine. It could be merciless to RPG newbies, but it damn sure looked great while your ass was being kicked. This one remains an excellent RPG today, and one of the Master System's best looking adventures. In 1989, Westone developed Wonderboy 3: The Dragon's Trap, and is another great-looking Sega Master System title. Again, the system's ability to color a nice environment and characters really pays off here. Sprites are large and nicely detailed, and rarely will you see any sprite flicker intrusive enough to be an eyesore. There is lots of variety in the different areas as well, with towns, deserts, volcanoes, and forests giving you a wide variety of places to do battle in. This one is fairly deep on the gameplay as well, with lots of little puzzles and tons of exploration to find items. It was remade in 2017 for modern platforms, but the classic Master System release is still one great looking and playing adventure. Castle of Illusion is one of my favorite games on the Master System, so when I found 1993's Land of Illusion, I just had to try it. Another internally developed game by Sega, the quality of this title is pure gold. It takes everything you loved about the first game and expands on it. Also like the first game, it continues the series tradition of being one heck of a nice looking game. Animation, color, detail, it all just oozes that classic Sega and Disney quality. There are even some great looking animated cinemas to keep the story flowing nicely. The only thing that mars the otherwise beautiful presentation is some nasty slowdown that pops up here and there, but it's infrequent enough to not be a big issue. Gameplay benefits from excellent stage variety, mandatory exploration of the overworld map, and enemies and obstacles that take more than just bouncing on their heads. It's an 8-bit game that plays as well as many 16-bit titles. I wouldn't appreciate 1990's Alex Kidd and Shinobi World until quite a while after its release. I had not been a big fan of Alex Kidd, so this was not something I wanted to give any real chance. Boy was that a mistake, because this is a game well worth playing. It also happens to be a great looking game too. The Sega Master System color strikes again with great looking characters and enemies and well detailed stages. Some Master System titles just had a rock solid look about them where they never seemed to flicker or slow down, and this is one of them. Of course it parodies Shinobi, so it carries many of the things that made that game so cool. Multiple weapons, secret areas, wall jumps, and even special attacks take it up a notch from your typical platformer. It did the Shinobi name proud, and Alex Kidd finally earned my respect as a character. I won't blow smoke up your ass. Core Design's 1993 title Chuck Rock 2 Son of Chuck was a shocking discovery for the Master System. I mean, this game put some early 16-bit games to shame. Sprite size, detail, color, shading, stage variety, it all just shouldn't be possible on the Master System, yet here it is. It even plays well, being almost as fast and responsive as the Genesis game. This particular version was never released in the US, but it did get a showing on the Game Gear. And when you consider the platform in the library, this might be a better experience than anywhere else. Aladdin made the rounds for just about everything back in the day, but the 1994 Sega Master System version here was something you just had to see. It had stages with some excellent layering effects, as well as special effects that made certain areas look three-dimensional in their presentation. There were great-looking cinemas and lots of variety in the gameplay thanks to vehicle, auto-scrolling obstacle courses, and free-roaming exploration stages. It has its own look and feel that creates a unique charm that separates it from the other games that share its name. It all has a very Prince of Persia vibe going on, and is a Master System game not to be missed. It's also on the Sega Game Gear. (1992's) The New Zealand story saw many versions, but the Master System game still blows me away every time I see it. You couldn't ask for a better arcade port to such modest hardware. It got the color right, the sprite size right, the details right, and the stages right. I mean, side by side with the Genesis game, come on, how can you not be impressed? She's a hard game guaranteed to test your patience, but the visuals really shine. That solid look I mentioned before is here as well. You'll find little in the way of sprite flicker, and the animation is excellent. As I mentioned before, lots of versions of this game are out there, and the Sega Master System Edition holds its own against every single one of them. The graphics hardware in the Master System was nothing to scoff at for an 8-bit console released in 1985. It could display an impressive amount of color and could put a fair number of sprites on the screen. These advantages allowed its games to show off impressive visuals when a game developer was so inclined to get it right. There was rarely a game on the platform that wasn't visually superior to similar games on comparable platforms. And when it was the same material, the Sega Master System almost always had the better looking edition. Of course, with Nintendo dominating the US and Japan and commanding the lion's share of third-party support, we'll never know just how great a Contra or Castlevania would have looked on it. There was no shortage of great games for the platform, however, and should you want to see more impressive looking graphics for it, there's always room for a part 2. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.